What did your friend do that accidentally turned you on? I came back from freshman year college to visit high school and walked into the auditorium, where an incredibly cute girl I was friends with saw me, stopped what she was doing and literally ran up the aisle and jumped into my arms to hug me. Plot twist, married 26 years and have a son. 3 years ago, we were once on a school trip, and we went to the woods, and I went with my other friends into the deep woods. We were all boys, and we got a little lost. She went out alone to look for me, and when she found me she just hugged me and whispered in my ear, "Goddammit, don't do this again. What the hell would I have told your parents?" And my dumb ducking-ass just laughed and shrugged and pretended like my heart didn't explode that day. Well, anyways, 3 years later I confessed and I'm sleeping right beside her now, and she has no idea I'm writing this. He and I were watching a movie when he gave me a hug. While hugging me he gently ran his hands up and down my back. He didn't mean anything sexual with it. I on the other hand have a very sensitive back and was severely turned on by it. The next day he made fun of me for being ticklish. I then admitted to the truth about that. Needless to say he did it again later. We've been dating for over a year now, getting close to 2. Multiple things. First, in a party he danced with me and lifted me in the air. I'm not thin and not many people tried this with me. Then on a trip we made with friends, his cousin made a tent using sheets and a bunk bed. We went inside to read manga on his phone. He put his arms around me so we both could see the screen. Before anyone asks, he wasn't into me back then, but now we've been together for nearly 4 years. Drive his car. I've never been into cars, or particularly into car guys, but I looked over at him since we were talking and we were going pretty fast, and I don't know. My body wasn't ready to look at my friend driving his fast car, I guess. He was driving and I was riding shotgun. He had to reverse to parallel park and turned his torso towards me, putting his arm around my seat in order to look back. He did that so confidently and effortless that it made me feel a little funny. You mean my good parking skills could actually be useful? ? This one girl started tickling me. When I started tickling her back, she started to moan and said she was sensitive there. Awkward drive home. Oh, I know that feeling. Except that in my case, my friend and I were watching a movie down in his parents' basement back in high school. It was a little chilly and we were kinda playfully fighting over the throw blanket. It turned into a bit of a tickle fight, but I was winning because I am not ticklish except for a few extremely sensitive places, whereas he was ticklish everywhere. He told me it wasn't fair that he couldn't tickle me since my only ticklish spots are the sides of my breasts and back of knees. I dared him to try it, thinking he never would as he was a good Christian boy. He absolutely went for it and tickled me unmercifully for about a minute until it morphed into complete and total desire. He could absolutely tell the second it changed and we ended up making out. I absolutely would have ducked him then and there, but we never went any farther. We never had a repeat of the makeout session, but there was always a huge amount of sexual tension between us after that, and it really kind of ruined the friendship. I was having a drink with an old friend a long time ago. At a point after a brief pause she just looked at me, smiled and said, "You're very handsome." You know, it got a little quiet, awkward, and we carried on drinking and chatting, and soon it was like nothing had happened. But from that moment on I never failed to notice the striking blow of her eyes, and my feelings became slightly complicated and conflicted. It didn't last, of course, just bizarre how a compliment can change a perception. Especially for us men who receive so few. We barely speak anymore. We're both married and she has a son. Of course I love my wife with all I have and all I am. But there's always that memory. I've never forgotten it and imagine I never will. We were neighbors. She just kicked out her ex-BF, and we lost power due to an ice storm. The power was restored later, but her heat wasn't working right. She called it in, but the maintenance people were busy with calls to fix heat in other units too. We were hanging out at my place watching movies and basking in my heat, though it was still chilly. So we were sharing a blanket on the couch, snuggled up together, and drinking whiskey. She passed out on the couch, so I put on an extra blanket on her and went to my room. About 1 hour later, she walks into my room and just falls into bed next to me, gets under the covers, snuggles up to me, then says I'm cold and passes out. I dunno, maybe I felt wanted and that she came to me for comfort. We didn't hook up or anything. The next morning she woke up, and she made me breakfast, and went back to her apartment to get her heat fixed. Edit. WTF happened between me posting this and now? Thanks I guess. We were going to a picnic with our classmates. This was in 10th grade. I'm doing second year of college now, and we were in this deluxe gigantic bus. We actually played hide and seek in the bus. Anyways. So while we were playing, I crossed my legs and sat down under one of the seats. And a female friend of mine came to the same spot and asked if she could hide with me. I agreed and she lied down and placed her head on my lap. But her head was exactly on my pen 15. It kinda turned me on, but I was trying really hard not to have a hard on and creep her out. Luckily, my efforts were not in vain. I still keep in touch with her and actually mentioned this to her a few months before covered it. She admitted that she knew she was on my pen 15, but didn't want to move because she thought that would make me feel awkward. We had a good chuckle and we're still good friends. Guy here. Senior year of high school. A guy dares me to give a massage to my girl best friend when she sits down. She sits down. I start giving her a shoulder massage, which I've been told I'm very good at, and she lets out a couple of soft moans and completely relaxes. I had never really been attracted to her until then. Then I stopped and she slumped back, tilted her head back so I was looking at her upside down, and she said, "Don't stop so." That was some feelings I felt since this got a fair amount of views. Nothing ended up coming out of it. She had a boyfriend at the time who was jealous of me for quite some time according to her. We haven't talked much in recent years, but we're having dinner and catching up either this weekend or next. Depends on if I have to work this weekend or not. I have feelings for her, but I'm not sure those feelings are strong enough worth ruining our 18+ year friendship. Probably wasn't accidental, but I was drinking with a friend of mine one night and she was bitching about her boyfriend at the time. I had always been interested in her, but I also respected it when she got into relationships, even though I really didn't like this guy she was with. She said she was gonna go to bed and that I could crash on the couch since I had been drinking. She started stretching in front of me and said that she always stretches before bed. Now I wouldn't have questioned this, but she was sticking her ass right in my face and she was getting into some pretty suggestive poses on the floor. She went to bed and the next day thanked me for letting her vent. A lot of people told me she was trying to duck and I should have went for it, but she had been drinking and had a boyfriend, so there were 2 red flags for me to not even try. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Best mate's girlfriend and I got along really well. I got along great with her parents. I was sitting on the couch at her parents' house watching motorsport with her dad. She sat next to me, fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I was okay until I could hear that cute little breathing noise coming from her. My mate broke up with her a month or so later. I was far too dumb to pick up on the many signals from her. We were sitting on her couch watching Thor Ragnarok. Finished our Chinese food. She went got a pint of Ben and Amp Jerry's out of her freezer and she sat sideways half on my lap and took turns taking a bite and feeding me a bite. It was oddly intimate, but she'd made it clear she was convinced if we started to date we'd end up married, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. 6 months later we were dating. 6 months after that we were married, coming up on our 2-year anniversary. We were in a theater with a group of friends. And while watching the movie, she would put her head on my shoulder and talk to me about how PPL come to theaters to kiss lol. I got the butterflies in my stomach but never acted on it. It was later on when I realized how dumb I was for missing my chance. This was 5 years back in high school. A female friend and I were put in a group together for a science project. We met up after school at her place because no one was home and she didn't want to drive over to my place. As I was sitting on my laptop and reading, she scratched my forearm with her nails to get my attention. Man. Her look in her eyes and the scratches. I still remember that. A friend of mine used to sit on my lap when we'd run out of chair hanging with other friends and she'd move her hips to find a comfy spot, but goddamn it was hard on me, to find a way that my little John wouldn't poke her in the butt. Which did happen a couple times, which would be followed by her giving me this smile and shifting just a little more and saying something coy. Another time was when we were hanging out while I had a really loose tooth. She was getting annoyed at me pushing at it with my tongue, so she pushed me to my bed, straddled me, and reached her hand in my mouth to tear my tooth out. From the sounds being made, my groaning, the bed shaking, my dad came up to make sure we were alright, then saw us sweaty, her on top of me, face right up to mine, and thought we were about to do it lol. After she used that as a distraction enough to yank my tooth out, I had to go downstairs to stop up the bleeding and managed to explain to him what had happened, to which he looked mildly disappointed, and I think his headcanon to this day is that I had sex with her, or at least some light, over the clothes, action. At a party once, she sat next to me and we just hugged and leant on each other for about 10 minutes. She also said that she wished she had done that earlier. I'd had feelings for her for about a year before that, so it felt really good. Edit for everyone who said I should go for it. Right now that's not really viable, especially with COVID going on. We're both at university and about 4 hours away from each other. I'm also someone who will very rarely start a conversation as I'm afraid that the other person just doesn't want to talk to me no matter how good friends we are. Edit 2. I feel like I should also mention another detail from the story which I'd missed. She had been drinking. Not a lot, but a few drinks at least. She also did pretty much the same thing to a few other people at another party a few months later, which is why I didn't think anything of it. And to all the people saying they're bullshit excuses and that I need to man up, you're right. I'm a pussy when it comes to these things. I care too much about what people think of me. Moved into an apartment where my roommate was one of my best friends who happened to be a girl. Completely platonic relationship for 12 years at that point. 6 months later I'm stoned out of my mind, as per usual, when I get home from work late at night and she asked me to lay down in her bed with her because she had woken up from a nightmare. So I laid down, on top of the blanket, and she fell asleep. I had intended to get up and go into my own room and watch cartoons with the rest of my high, but I ended up getting comfy and fell asleep. The next morning she woke me up by lightly scratching my back, but little did she know that nails on my back are an instant turn on. Never had any feelings for each other. Never did anything even remotely physical. Nothing. Just boom, instant wood. Jokingly told her to cut it out or it's gonna get awkward, and she didn't know what I meant at first until I rolled over and she saw the tent in my pants. We discussed the idea of us being together or even just casual sex between friends, and 1 year later I wifed her. No regrets. Not a single letter. Married my best friend because she accidentally made me horny. A few years ago me and a friend were goofing around, making flower crowns on a grassy knoll. She decides to roll down said knoll, and as she does her shirt rides up and I can see the sun reflecting off that little line of hair that goes down from the belly button. I swear time stopped and all of my blood vessels woke up at once. The sun was shining brighter, the flowers smelled sweeter. It was as if I briefly stepped into a more perfect pocket dimension. It was then I knew I definitely was not straight. When I worked in a restaurant, the head chef was the type who was very particular. His way was always right and he was bossy, but he was also super nice, funny to it, balanced out. He essentially just had a very dominant personality. I would call the garlic toast garlic bread because I didn't see much of a difference, and while we were rushing that's the name that would come out of my mouth. It was kind of our thing to bicker back or forth. We had fun and laughed with it and it never had any actual tension. But one day I yelled for some garlic bread. He's holding it in his tongs and is about to give it to me when he says call it garlic toast. I said okay I will when he goes, no. Say it now. Call it garlic toast. I want to hear you say it. So I start giggling and say okay chef, to where he once again in a very dominant way says no. Say it. Once I cracked and laughed, then said it. He smiled and good girl y'all. The sub in me has never been happier. Heterosexual male here. Male friend of mine was responding to a question another friend asked and my eyes met with his. He gave me a quick wink, which was never a thing he did, and it caught me so off guard. I later caught myself giggling and swooning at the move. Had a similar situation once. Still straight. But I had a friend over for my birthday. When he was looking up a video game we both wanted to play on my PC, I remember having just the incessant urge to kiss his cheek. From the side it just looked so soft, like a baby's cheek. Never had it happen again, but that scene still sticks with me. We were at a house party with some friends and the setting was quite cozy cause we were sitting outside by the fire. One of my friends was a girl who I knew was attractive, but I didn't look at her in that way, not at that time. It was when it started to get chilly outside and she chose to get inside that flipped the script. I was standing by the sliding door, so there was a narrow space to pass. She came from behind while I was facing another friend I was talking to, gently held my waist with both hands, but slightly low, right by the frontal pelvis area. Boy, when I tell you the temperature iced outside, I'm not kidding. When I turned around, I didn't her anymore. I saw a beautiful, gentle, soft woman. She smiled and asked to pass to get inside. I just froze like I didn't understand words. Lol. I swear if words had come out I would have said, but where are you going? I can't live without you. This one's a little on the nose, but there was this girl I was hanging out with just after graduating high school. She had a BF, but we were good friends. We were roughhousing, pushing each other around one day, and I pushed her a little too hard to the floor. I knelt over her to see if she was okay, and through her messed up hair covering half-wee face she whispered, "Just duck me already." It is the hottest thing I've ever experienced to this day, a decade later. I guess I accidentally turned her on by pushing her too hard. This is a girl I slept with a few times and not just a friend, so I'm not sure if this is fitting. Once I, 24M at the time, invited myself to her, 22F, and her friend's girls' night to watch The Bachelor. And it was everything a girls' night should be. Various snacks, extended couch with seemingly thousands of pillows, blankets and plushies, white wine, pyjamas. We ordered MC Donald's and talked trash about all the girls on the show simping for that one totally overrated guy. But the girl in question, the one I had occasional hookups with, was wearing a unicorn onishi as a pajama. Nothing special, nothing obviously sexy at all. If anything, it looked comfortable as hell. But hell, something about it made me go crazy. All I could think about was her in that onishi. I even suggested a few times for her to wear it in bed, mostly packed in some kind of joke. We always laugh it off, but I don't think she realizes that I'm way more serious than I'd admit. Former co-worker on base, close to 18 years ago, had been trying for an entire year to get in better shape. She had always been pretty but just wasn't happy with what Emira showed her. A year of swimming, running, and lightweight training later, and holy shit. I was talking to her and she stretched, arms above her head, and her sweater lifted up to her ribcage, showing all that glorious tummy real estate down to the hip bones. Apologies, mom, but I may have had many impure thoughts about said tummy real estate since. Side note, we were very not interested in each other romantically, so no, this wasn't a sending messages kind of gesture. Damn. So I'm friends with a girl who does judo at a national level, and we get along like a house on fire, and we have a day mooching around town, going to coffee shops etc, and then we go back to her place whilst we wait for TBH I can't remember what we were waiting for, my parents, maybe? So anyway, her house is in the final stages of a do-over, and she's set up one of the rooms with her judo mats, and she asks if she can practice some throws on me. I agree. I am swiftly pummeled into the floor, multiple times, and I don't know if it was the close contact, or if it was the pummeling, but I am super into it, and there is genuinely a couple of times where I think about kissing her, or making some other move, but I chicken out. Didn't want to ruin the friendship. I walk away with some small bruises, a bit of a bone air, and, months later, the realization that wait, was she trying to make a move on me? Years later I still can't tell. Didn't try to take advantage of my drumkiness when I was clearly signaling for a kiss. Not getting a kiss back made me appreciate that friend a lot indeed. I remember in college there was a girl who I was almost sure liked me. She was pretty cute and we had great conversation, so if I had the courage to, I definitely would have asked her out. One night we were hanging out as our usual crew, me, her, and my male roommate, and she invites her brother and a couple of his friends over to my and my roommate's dorm. We start getting drunk and she gets pretty far gone. I tell her that she should go to bed and her response was only if you come with me. All the other guys were like, oh, except her brother, who just stared off into space. I showed her to my bed, put a trash can by it in case she needed to puke, and told her I'd be back in a few. I locked my bedroom door from the outside. I didn't know her brother's friends and we had recently gotten the notice of a grape in our dorms, so that was fresh in my mind, and after they left, I crashed on the couch in our dorm living room. I guess she wasn't as drunk as she let on because it was just awkward after that. She would barely look me in the eye. We hung out a couple more times but she only would have a couple beers then leave. I'm pretty sure she took my concern as a lack of interest, but at the time, I wasn't confident enough to speak up. Edit, it seems like people are hung up on the door locking. Long story short, the door's key locked unlocked from the outside and hand. I don't know if that's the right word, but you didn't need a key to get out. Locked unlocked from the inside. Long story long. It was a 4-bedroom unit with a shared living room and kitchen area. Our keys unlocked the front door and our bedroom doors. I locked my door every time I left, even when I got to know the people I lived with. One year we had some people over and I didn't lock my door and someone stole my phone.